Hello all. I welcome you all on behalf of Team Opash. Today we all are gathered here virtually for the December month Golmage. Golmage literally means round table, a table with no sides. We have created this safe space where we can discuss difficult as well as easy topics thoroughly. When I say thoroughly, it involves study, it involves detailed research, refined data at hand, and obviously readiness to listen to others. We were not sure about it, but after four successful Golmage, we can say that it is possible to have such rational discussions on table. It is possible to discuss all the sides and angles of the issue without any biases. We also realize that people need such kind of space. People are appreciating the concept. So, here we are for the fifth session of Golmage 2020. Today, we all are meeting online. We are going to discuss issues for next half an hour, 1.5 hours. We are sitting at our places and still we are able to do this. Why and how come? Was it possible to have such kind of online discussion or online thing 10 years back? Today it's easy, it's cheap, it's accessible to everyone. Don't you think it's an achievement? This IT revolution changed the face of Indian education and Indian businesses on large scale. Dr. Kalam detailed out a brilliant plan, a roadmap for developed India, developed progressive India. In that plan, he stressed on the importance and inevitability of information technology. India's Vision 2020 was initially a document prepared by the Technology Information Forecasting and Assessment Council of India's Department of Science and Technology under the chairmanship of APJ Abdul Kalam and team of 500 experts. The plan is further detailed in the book India 2020, A Vision for the New Millennium, which Dr. Kalam co-authored with Y.S. Rajan. 20 years later, it's time to see how the country has fared. What did the forecast say then? Did we do enough to meet the goals that we set out to achieve? What sectors of the development stage did India reach its potential, and where did we fail in our tryst with destiny? First, let me introduce my team. Kapilesh. Kapilesh is handling all the technical side of the session. Akhil is co-moderator for today's session, and Komal is the head of secretary panel. I welcome you all. So we will start with the rules and regulations first. So I request Komal to explain all the rules before we go ahead. Over to you, Komal.
Thank you, Neha. Hello, everyone. This is on behalf of the secretary panel that shall ensure adherence to all rules of Golmage through this session. I shall now make an announcement of some of the important rules that shall be observed throughout this session. Firstly, the medium of communication in this Golmage for all speakers may be English, Marathi, or Hindi. Secondly, every speaker shall be allotted a certain amount of time by the moderator within which they shall conclude. Thirdly, the instructions of the moderator in respect to moderation shall be binding upon the presenters. Further, speakers should make sure not to speak over one another as far as possible. Please note that none of the organizing individuals or institutions of Golmage shall bear any liability for any words used by any of the presenters. The presenters shall bear liability in their individual capacity for the words used by them in this episode of Golmage. Importantly, every speaker shall refrain from the usage of any words that may lead to the violation of any law in force. For example, making any inflammatory or hateful statement against any community likely to incite violence, or making any defamatory or insulting statement against any person. Further, no speaker shall make any direct or subtle undesirable personal comment against any person throughout the session. For the viewers, any questions by the viewers where they wish to put them to the presenters or the moderators may be put in the comments section. They shall be taken up by the moderators as per their discretion and shall undergo scrutiny before being taken up. Lastly, at any point throughout this session, the Secretary panel reserves the right to interrupt, to restrain, or issue a warning to any person whom, according to the panel, may be violating any of the specified rules or against any undesirable act or speech, as and when the panel deems necessary according to the situation. In case there's continued non-compliance with the rules or restraint after issuance of a warning by this panel, the panel may exercise the right to disqualify such a person from participation in this session. Now, our presenters will make presentations on our topic, which will be followed by a discussion. Our moderators may then take up some questions. After that, we shall take a look at the summary of today's Goldmesh discussion before moving towards the conclusion with further announcements. Neha.
Thank you so much, Komal. For today's session, we have two presenters. I welcome Abhishek and Prathamesh on behalf of our team. We'll start with Abhishek. Abhishek is currently based in Bangalore. He has done his engineering from Pune University and MBA from IIM Bangalore. Currently, he is working as a retail consultant for Global Corporation. I welcome Abhishek. Abhishek, you have 12 to 15 minutes in your hand, so you can start with your presentation.
Here and hi, thanks Neha, and thanks to all the viewers for joining in. What I'll do is I'll share my screen and quickly take you through what I have to share. Let me know once it's up, Neha. Can you?
Yeah,
please?
yeah.
All right. So, all right. Essentially, what we have is, as Neha introduced the topic, we are looking at how India could have become a developed nation. And in that vision, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam highlighted 5 levers which will essentially help us reach that goal. So those 5 levers are what I'm calling out initially, which is around agriculture and food processing, information and communication technology, education and healthcare infrastructure development, and self-reliant in critical technologies. So what I'll do in the 12 to 15 minutes allocated to me is that I'll try to take you through the understanding about the first 2 levers, which is essentially the agriculture and food processing and the information and communication technology. In the course of this time, I'll try to introduce this topic. Now, all of these levers are a huge topic in themselves. It's going to be very, very difficult to try to force fit everything in a short period of time. So what I'll try to do is I'll try to introduce this topic and take us to a state where all the viewers, all the presenters are aware of where we are, and then can think in a more logical manner about what could and should be the next steps. So what I'll do is I'll start with agriculture and food processing. And this is something which is like really, really very quintessential about Indian economy. So agriculture is something with which all the civilizations start. We as Indian society, we also started with agriculture. And the diversity, the sheer diversity and the scale of what we have as resource is huge. So we have around 46 out of the 60 types of soil available in the world. So we can almost grow anything that grows anywhere else around the world. But very critical thing about Indian farming has been that it's really monsoon dependent. It's still monsoon dependent to a huge extent. Because of the shorter, smaller farm sizes, we do subsistence farming, essentially where the farmers grow things so that they can spend the year by eating that food, and not really something where they are gaining in or generating more value for them and getting richer. Also, so very seasonal pattern. As the seasons change, the crops change. So we have Rabi, Kharif crop coming in. But so to understand where we are right now, I think it's very critical to see how we arrived over here and what were the phases through which we actually passed through to come over here. So what I've done is I've taken the liberty to segregate them into 3 phases. One is the after effects of Britishers, which is essentially when the decline started. It was the time when zamindari system was introduced. The farmers were forced to pay given amount of tax every year. Then they were forced to start producing more of cash crops and less of food grains. And that was a phase which was really marked by a lot of famines. People were dying because of lack of food, because the Britishers had their vested interest. Then came in the next phase, which was the age of revolution. It was after 1960s. So there was a time when famine came in independent India, and India actually had to go and go to US and ask them for food grains, we got the worst quality of food grains that they had available. And that was the time when the leaders of the country decided that there needs to be a revolution. What followed was Green Revolution. There was Operation Flood for milk. Then there was Yellow Revolution for the oil seeds and so on, which really tried to make us more self-reliant on the grains and our food security. The last part was the last big thing which kicked in was the globalization. What happened around here was essentially the markets opened up. There was a lot of focus on making things very cost competitive, as well as the industry somehow. So the focus changed from agriculture to industrialization. So prior to liberalization, all the politics was also associated around farmers. But after that, a lot of belief came in that the growth is possible through industrialization, and a slight neglect happened around the agriculture. So what really does this mean for us, right? So what it impacted or resulted in was that the food crops production started increasing. So after the age of revolution, what happened was that India never ever faced any other famine. So there was drought situation, but there was no famine situation. We kept on increasing our production capabilities, and we are now self-sufficient. We have been self-sufficient in foods in 1990s. In fact, we are one of the top first or second producer of a lot of crops, not just food grains, but also cash crops like mangoes, bananas, etc. But this is the rosy picture. There is the other side to the coin, and which is essentially what didn't change. So what did not change was the farmer situation did not really improve. uh, in fact, the food availability did not improve a lot. So it's not like that we started producing a lot more and hence people were now more healthier and so on. That did not happen. The net output did not flow back into the economy. People do also uh, propose that after the liberalization, with so much focus on the cost and focus shifting from agriculture to industry, the farmers really came under a lot of stress. So they had to take loans to arrange with the increasing cost of fertilizers, seeds, and so on. And essentially, that debt kept on piling up, and then this new phase started where we start hearing about farmer suicides. And essentially, that's the whole picture, right? So our production increased, but then there were additional stresses coming in on farmers across the entire value chain. So what's critical to understand is then after going through all these three things, where are we right now? So after those three phases, what we see is our agriculture is huge. It employs around 50% of the Indian workforce, but it generates just 18% of GDP. And when I say just 18%, it's because the other sectors, which employ much lesser people, generate equivalent or proportionately very high amount of GDP. That means that there is a lot of stress. So the income per farmer is not really huge. Also, when we compare ourselves with global other countries and so on, what we see is that we have a couple of problems, right? So there is one around the low yield that we have. Uh, the reasons are multifold. So we have smaller farm sizes. There is no economy of scale which can be leveraged, and so on. But our yield is very less. Our farmlands are still dependent on 70%. These are the semi-arid regions where the stress of farming is very high, and these are also the regions where you see a lot of suicides coming in from the farmers. Uh, our food processing capacity is not really yet developed. So USA, on the other hand, processes around 70% of the food. We just do that for 10% of our food. It's critical because this is where the value gets added in to all the produce. Also, so the other reasons are that there is loss of wastage because the entire value chain is not here. And but all these intrinsic problems are also impacted by what the governments are doing, how the market is evolving. So what we see is that the government is working on a lot of policies. So there is e-market, e-NAM, through which a lot of trading now happen for commodity grains. The consumption pattern is changing. So our basic food diet has changed to include a lot more fruits and vegetables and fishes and so on. So it's a very dynamic market. We have some intrinsic problem, and this is a huge sector. So at no point of time can we say that it's not something where we want to focus. That's not a luxury that we have. Essentially, what's the problem in which that we are taking? So this very quickly will give you a very quick snapshot into how we are differing from the global players. So the entire value chain starts with input companies which provide the farmers the seeds and the fertilizers and insurance. Then there is the farmer who is actually producing the farm, and then there is the supply chain, which is taking the items from the farm to the fork, which is your warehouse and logistics, and essentially your retail, which comes in the end segment, do the trading. So your wholesalers, your retailers, your Moores, all those companies sit over here. But when you compare this entire value chain, how the value is being captured, what value is being captured by the farmer or the producer who do the very heavy lifting, you see that in India it's just it's very marginal amount of value which is being captured by the farmers. But in globally, the farmers capture much more value, around 45 to 50% of the entire value chain. And that's essentially leading to very high stresses on the farmers, a very big problem that we have been struggling with. Just calling out the 5 kind of key challenges that we have been facing. It's around finance, so availability of credit, again the stresses because of increasing cost. Then there has been work around this, but the information is lacking. So a lot of farming is just based on seasonal understanding of the patterns, not really leveraging the information around both environment, your resources, as well as market. The third problem is around the lower yields, as I mentioned, and then the wastage and the scarcity of resources. So there are stats which state that around 40% of the groundwater available has already been extracted. So where do we go from here now, right? To close this up, right? So how do we go ahead on this? The idea over here is that we'll look at everything very holistically. The agricultural aspect has to be taken in terms of the whole value chain. We have to leverage technology. That's something which we have been building up a lot on. We have to think sustainability. So what happened in Green Revolution was there were certain pockets which were identified for us to improve the productivity. In those particular areas, namely Punjab and Haryana, there was a lot of extraction of groundwaters, a lot of wheat farming happened, a lot of pesticides used. And what has happened is that the soil quality and the water quality has gone very down over there. So we have to think sustainability when we think of agriculture. The focus has to change from farm produce to farm producers, which is essentially the farmers. And for that, in fact, Niti Aayog has recently published a document which talks about doubling the farmers' income by 2023. And of course, the last thing being that it's not just the responsibility of a government, but the farmers have to be very responsible, and so has to be the producers and the consumers as well. So we as the end user have to be very responsible in terms of how we consume and what we consume and from where we consume it. So what I'll do is from here, I've spoken a lot about technology. I did talk about information yield and so on, and that's essentially the second lever which Dr. Abdul Kalam was referring to, and that is our information communication technology. So what I'll do is I'll try to again give a very similar snapshot of the industry where we are and how we should be looking ahead on this topic. What's critical to know is that there are two fronts of it. So there is this one IT sector, the general IT sector that we call out, all the Wipros and Accentures and TCS is one part of it, and then there is telecom. So that is the front end of it, where we see all the revenue coming in. So Vodafones and Airtels and so on. That's what was driving the GDP share. So what you see over here is it's around again 14% of our GDP. Agriculture was 18%. Agriculture had half of the entire country population dependent on it for their income. But this sector has just around 8 million people, plus minus some more numbers, which are dependent on it. So what that indicates is that it generates per person, the revenue being generated is much higher. And that's why you see that there's this push towards people trying to get into IT sector so that make more money and so on. And we have done great on this. So there is agriculture where there is some progress, some grim side to it, but on this ICT front, we have done really good progress. Essentially, when we kicked in by starting with HCL and then Wipro came in and then Infosys came in, that kind of changed the way in which the entire economy was shaping up. So suddenly we moved from agriculture dependent economy to an economy where services contribute to around 67% of our GDP. So we did really great over here. But the second part of it is how did that change our personal life? So now everybody, when I go out to the market, I don't actually look for my wallet. Initially, I used to do that. I just have to ensure that I have my mobile phone with me. As Neha was mentioning, we are able to talk about all these topics sitting in our home, which was completely impossible sometimes back. And this is all possible because the growth that happened in ICT actually percolated to the last people, which is essentially you and me around over here. So we see that in India, it has around 680 million internet users, which is huge. So a lot of countries don't have that much population. We crossed 1.5 billion transactions in UPI, unprecedented. Singapore government did ask for Indian government to help them launch something similar to Bheem UPI and so on, because nobody does that. Even in developed country, people carry their cards and they tap it and go. But we just don't need any cards anymore. We are using our mobiles. Our ITRs, which were being filed, represents around 98% of them were technologically or electronically done. 78% of population has mobile subscription, which is more than 1 billion people, which is huge. So we are the second largest telecom market in the world as well. Also, our cost of data is lowest. And that means that everybody, the internet has reached like the nooks and corners of the country, if not everyone, but to a huge extent, which has made a lot of things possible. So how do we look at it? Just very quickly to understand, this is something which I've already mentioned, so I won't really spend time over here. But what's important is what has been driving the growth for us in this section, right? So we had like huge pool of qualified people. And when we say that there is a lot of pros and the cons, right? So we also have data that a lot of engineers who come out of colleges are not employable. But having said all of those things, it's actually factually correct that we are the hub of the outsourcing that happens. 55% of the global service sourcing comes in from India. And that means that we have developed some capabilities around languages, around skills, around emerging technologies, which has enabled us to keep pace with whatever is happening. Also, then there is this telecom industry, which has been growing because of one key factor, which everybody knows. So everybody has a geo connection, forming essentially the backbone of where we are. And this was the front end of it. The back end of it was the vision of getting digital India. This is essentially the place where things started changing, where you're not just looking at the GDP contribution of an end sector, but actually seeing how it impacts us. This was a vision which was brought in by the government. They basically looked at three main visions around having digital infrastructure to support the growth, ensuring that governance and services become on demand, and then the citizens are empowered digitally. And for it, they did a lot of foundational work. So there is India Stack, which was developed. India Stack, for people who don't know, is a tech infra and platform, which essentially allows, it's a set of open APIs, which is available to all. It enables people to start developing applications on them. It is one of the core foundation on which the UPI is based. And UPI is, of course, everybody knows, so Google Pay, Paytm UPIs, and so on, which completely transformed our economy. Of course, there were other pillars. There was demonetization, which happened. There was this COVID impact. But we have been able to go on around that by leveraging digital. And that's really a good story, which I wanted to call out over here. Just some examples of where we have been focusing. So UPI and Jan Dhan Yojana changed the face of how financially inclusive we were. Now, there are around 400 million people who are benefiting from Jan Dhan Yojana, directly getting the benefits in their account. Then government started Swayam, which is essentially a MOOC, which is your open, free, massive open online courses, which are free educational content. You get everything over here from 9th class till your engineering degrees, everything free of cost, all from high quality people. So now lack of money is also probably not a problem for knowledge, at least. And then there's this MyGov. This is essentially the place where government rolls out any proposals for new plans. People can participate, they can get engaged in the debates and so on, helping government decide what people really want, actually democratizing the democracy that we have. How do we go on about it? So we keep on thinking digital, we build on what we already have. There has to be a regulatory framework. A very good call out over here is that Constitution of India was amended to include privacy as one of the key rights that people have, and also then keep on building on the skill development. We are a diverse country. The fact is that there are a lot of languages. People don't everywhere converse in English and so on. We have to be cognizant of that fact and then see how we can best leverage what we have right now. It's been a long monologue from my side. What I'll do is I'll take a pause over here and hand it back to Neha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Now I welcome our second presenter, Prathamesh. Prathamesh is co-founder of Bots and Brains, which work as research and product development partner to build select medical device technologies along with all necessary support from concept to commercialization. Prathamesh, you also have 12 to 15 minutes in your hand. Please start with your presentation.
Sure. Thank you so much, Neha. I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. First of all, thank you so much for having me here today. This topic is probably one of the closest topics for me. We launched our company on 15th of October. That's Dr. Kalam sir's birthday. Because that is one personality who has been the driving force behind our company as well. So it's an honor to be here today and to talk about this topic. I'll be breaking it down into these 4 points. First, just a quick go through in terms of what did Dr. Kalam say, what was his vision for India, what was the roadmap that he presented, and then where we are right now in terms across different industries, and what is the way forward. All of us kind of, I think, agree and know that we are way far away from what Dr. Kalam originally envisioned for us. But what is the way forward, and how can we make that dream a reality? How can we turn that vision into reality, and how all of us can play a very critical role in making that possible. So, to be honest, Dr. Kalam had 3 visions for India. The first was freedom, the second was development, and third was self-respect. Self-respect as a nation where we can stand up to the global forces and make our stand. Tell to the world that okay, we are not reliant on anybody. We are self-reliant in every critical area of our lives, and there is no scope for you to bully us, right? Then he probably the best thing that he has done is he laid out a roadmap to achieve the dream, because dreaming is easy. Turning it into a plan of action is probably the most difficult part. But he has done that for us already. And he highlighted these 5 critical areas which are important, very important for any country in the world to be self-reliant and to be completely independent, which is agriculture and food. Big पेट का सवाल है. Infrastructure, क्योंकि to do your job you have to move around. So rasta, railways, airways, all of that has to be there with you. Education and healthcare, again the most critical element of your life. सीखा नहीं कुछ तो मैं कुछ बन नहीं सकता, और अगर हेल्थ केयर के लिए मेरे पास डॉक्टर नहीं है, दवाई नहीं है, तो मैं अगर मेरे को कुछ हो गया कल, तो हाउ डू आई सर्वाइव. ICT probably one of the biggest drivers. The revolution which started with a very simple invention called a telephone, which started connecting this entire world, which has turned now into a very globalized society. We're still, I feel, in the process of ironing out a lot of issues, but very soon we'll see this entire world as one society, which we already see in the digital world. And obviously the critical technologies like nuclear, like defense, which are very important in terms of safety of the country, right? So let's just check where we are as a country. There are these few key indicators which we should look at, which kind of give you a very broad overview in terms of where we are and what we are doing. And let's just have a quick comparison with different countries. Now, these countries have been selected for a very simple reason, that in terms of in terms of size of GDP, we probably are equivalent to where UK is, and we desperately want to fight a competitive fight with China and US in terms of achieving a technology leadership, right? We always keep on talking about how we want to replicate what China did in their country, and how do we want to become the technology leaders of the world. But if we look at the number of companies, for example, you can see that the difference between us is stark, right? It's unimaginable that a country of 1.25 billion people has only 1.18 million active companies. If we look at so there is this report called Global Innovation Index, which ranks and scores different economies based on how conducive your environment is for innovation and how product driven you are as an economy. When it comes to product exports, China obviously has the number one position. All of us know why. USA, UK, all of them are doing good. India lags supremely behind at a 46th rank, right? Patents, which is generally a very important output metric in terms of what is the innovation, what is the R&D capabilities that your country has. Last year, UK received 1,70,000 applications. USA received 6 lakh applications. China received 12 lakh applications, while India received only 50,000 applications. And the story does not end here. Out of these 50,000, 35,000 applications were applications which were filed by foreign entities in India. Only 15,000 applications were filed by Indians in India. When it comes to researchers per million, so for every million population we have, UK has around 4,000 plus researchers. USA has around 4,000 researchers. China, which has an equivalent denominator in terms of population base, even they have around 1,200 researchers. We hardly have 200 researchers per million of our population. But we are probably one of the highest. We are a funny country. We produce one of the highest number of STEM graduates. STEM is science, technology, engineering, math. If we check out the rankings, we are 7th ranked in the world in terms of the number of graduates which pass out every year in this country. But research कोई करता नहीं है. कहाँ पे जाते हैं लोग? The answer is simple. We are a service-driven economy, and we are the best ranked. We have the pole position when it comes to service exports. We have become the offshoring hub for different economies. Started with the revolution of Infosys and TCS and all these big giants, giants which have now become the government jobs of today's world. So I think that is where we are. And in this context, let's dive deep into 3 critical areas. The first, obviously, being education. We have around 10,000 institutes in this country. Now, again, this data is from AICTE. If anyone is interested, you can always go to AICTE, go to the statistics section and check out what they say. But this is the reality of our education sector, right? We have built huge capacities in terms of how many students can we educate every year. But we are hardly 50% utilized, right? Where we have around 2 million odd students which enroll every year for different STEM related courses. Again, STEM is science, technology, engineering, math. We have around 15 lakh students who pass out every year. But if you look at the placement numbers, the situation is very dire, right? You can see hardly 5 lakh students getting jobs every year, right? These are campus placements. Now, the most popular argument is, यार अपने यहाँ पे लोग बाहर निकल जाते हैं, B.Tech कर लेते हैं, and then they move to US, they move to UK, they move to other countries to do their masters. But 15 lakh में से कितने लोग करते हैं ये लोग, right? That number is hardly 1%, 2% who can afford to go to foreign universities and do their further education and then settle abroad. But most of these engineers, most of these guys, they don't get jobs, and that is the reality. If you just go check around what is the kind of people who are getting jobs with the likes of Swiggy's and Olas and Ubers, you'll find that most of them have a science background, most of them have an engineering background. I know a lot of people who started a vada pav gadi just because they could not get a respectable job, right? So that is where we are in terms of education. And as I said earlier, kahan pe jate log? We are probably one of the as a country, we produce one of the highest number of graduates in when it comes to science, technology, and engineering and math. But when it comes to researchers, we are really doing poorly. And that is another reason why we see this huge difference. We are a good service dominant economy, but we are highly reliant, highly dependent on other countries when it comes to high tech products, right? And we can go into different, we will definitely go into different areas in this presentation as well. But we can obviously go and check this information ourselves. कि हम लोग क्या क्या इम्पोर्ट करते हैं यार, और हम लोग क्या क्या एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं. इम्पोर्ट करते का मतलब बहुत सिंपल है. We need this technology, but we cannot build it ourselves. That is why we have to import it from somebody else, right? Now, there is some interesting perception in terms of why our students underperform, right? There are a lot of parents, a lot of teachers who will tell you that okay, our students are, they have a problem paying attention in their lectures. They are not curious enough. They don't want to work hard. So on and so forth, right? Every teacher you'll find every teacher complaining that यार हमारे बच्चे पढ़ाई करने के लिए उनको पढ़ाई नहीं करना होता है. एग्जाम के पहले सिर्फ रट्टा मार के आ जाते हैं और कुछ तो लिख देते हैं, फिर हम लोग भी उसको कुछ करते नहीं है. But I feel all of these assumptions, so we've a couple of almost a year back we had done this proper survey with around 200 to 300 participants, including teachers and parents, and these were the typical answers which all of them gave us, right? But there is data to prove all of these people wrong, right? First example, Netflix. Netflix has proven that okay, we don't have a problem with attention spans, right? We can binge watch a series for 18 hours, not get up from that one place, one couch where we were sitting and vegetating for a long time, and we can continuously keep on consuming content like nobody's business, right? The likes of Facebook and Instagram have also proven this point that okay, attention span is there, and you can spend hours and hours just mindlessly scrolling through different posts and different photos, liking and commenting, just because you want that validation, right? Then you had TikTok, which had become a massive rage in India, and you could see people taking so much of effort, so much of pain just to get that 10-second video right, so that you can get those 80K, 90K, 100K views. And just by the one thought that you had कि okay, कभी तो जाके मैं एक TikTok celebrity बन जाऊंगा. And you kept on putting a lot of effort. You go to Delhi, you go to Punjab, you go to UP, you go to Maharashtra, you go to Kerala, you go to any part of the country, right? You will find people right on the roads shooting stuff mindlessly in the heat of the day. दोपहर के 2 बजे भी जाके कुछ ना कुछ शूट करते रहते हैं just for the 10-second video which can make them viral, right? And you had PUBG, where government had to bring a ban. They had to bring in a ordinance state which compelled the company to put in a small program in the code of this game that if a player is playing for more than 6 hours, you have to give him a notification, boss, you're playing for a long time, you have to take a break now, right? So all of these people, all of these different folks, all of these different companies have proven that okay, these assumptions are invalid. The problem is not with their attention spans. The problem is not with their levels of curiosity. The problem is not with their intent to put in effort to do something, to achieve something. It's just that the way in which the content, the way in which education is delivered to these guys, probably that needs a change, right? COVID has been a big accelerant in terms of taking education online, but how we do that is going to be a big question. You have a lot of these big edtech companies coming out, which are trying to solve this problem. But the question that we need to answer is: can we replace the universities? Can we replace educational institutes? And can we go completely online? My personal belief is the answer is no, because education is more about practical learning and doing stuff and experimenting than just learning theory. When it comes to software related courses, it's still possible, but when it comes to courses which deal with the physical world, like mechanical, like electronics, going completely online seems impossible scenario, right? So the question remains is, how do we solve this challenge of giving the education that these students deserve, in the format that they crave for, in the format that they crave for, right? So that's my 2 bits on the education part. Second, let's move to infrastructure, transport, energy, data, energy. Now the data says one very important thing, right? That we are building roads around the country at an accelerated pace. You'll find the representatives from the government's Ministry of Road Transport, which is led by Mr. Gadkari, uh, who come and claim that, okay, we are building so many number of roads, we have taken the number of kilometers of road built per day from this to this, we have built so many highways, and there is so many other projects which have been sanctioned and in pipeline, and we have connected these many regions which were not connected. You'll find Mr. Piyush Goyal coming and claiming that, okay, we have electrified so many railway systems, we have taken everything digital. You can book your ticket on your mobile phone now. We are improving the quality of services across railways. Electrification has been one of the most vocal. The government has been extremely vocal about the electrification part, where the government claims that we have now finally integrated the entire country on a single grid, where each and every village and each and every household has been connected. Uh, so if you look at the numbers, also they also kind of tell the same story. Yes, there are regions in the northeast part of the country where there is a lot of work that remains to be done in terms of the reliability of power, so that every individual has an access to 24-hour electricity. But again, there is. I always believe that there is data, there is, and then there are perceptions, and then there is reality, right? Perception comes from the context, with which.
Prathamesh,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. You have last 5 minutes.
Sure. We'll be I'm very sure that all of you must have seen this video, which was doing a lot of rounds. There was this chap in Bangalore who uploaded this video. The point is simple, right? This entire video was a big shout out to the face of the government that, okay, you can claim all the glory that you have, all the glory, and say that you have built these many roads, but this is the quality of roads that we are getting. The number does not make sense. You can build 30 kilometers of road every day, but if the road quality is going to be this shabby, then what is the point of building such roads, right? So, and we can find examples of this across these different segments. Railways में जाओगे तो अभी भी वही पुराना घिसा पिटा व्यवहार चलता है. There is definitely a lot of improvement, but there are a lot of problems also. And last but not the least, one of my favorite topics, healthcare, because essentially this is something which deals with our life literally, right? But if you look at the per capita expenditure on healthcare that we do as a country, we are probably amongst the lowest again. So we just spend around $209 billion USD on healthcare. We are growing at a very fast rate, right? But there is a lot of schemes which the government has come out with, Ayushman Bharat, insurance, etc., etc., etc. But again, the most critical problem still remains. There is no infrastructure, right? We hardly have 1.3 beds per 1,000 people of our population, and we have less than one doctor per 1,000 people of our population, right? Which is insane, which is something which we should not accept, right? All of us who are in the urban pockets of the country, we might have access to the best infrastructure around us, but once we move towards tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, in the villages, they have no access to any reliable healthcare infrastructure, right? Government hospitals का हालत क्या है, हम लोग को सब लोग को पता है, हम लोग उसके बारे में देख चुके
Prathamesh,
हैं.
last 2 minutes. It's
Yeah, I'm done.
5:50 almost. Yeah.
So, sorry. So again, this is something which is completely not acceptable and which we should not accept. The point remains, what is the way forward? Dr. Kalam had three, as I mentioned earlier also, he had three visions for us. One is freedom, second was development, third is self-respect. Uh, but what is freedom? We need to have freedom first in our own minds. We're still not free. Yes, we have got freedom from the colonizers which we had, but I feel in our minds we still are not free, because we always carry this bias of who we are and what we deserve. हम लोग हमेशा बात करते रहते कि यार ये तुम ये नहीं कर सकता, तू ये नहीं कर सकता, तू बिजनेस नहीं कर सकता, तेरे को इंजीनियर बन के तेरे को जॉब लेना है. We first need to get rid of those biases and be freedom, achieve that freedom of thought. Second is development, which can be only achieved when we start solving problems around us. It is important for us to stop cribbing about these problems or ignoring these problems, dusting them down the rug. And when we start solving problems, only then can we achieve any development. We cannot just rely on governments to do that. And third is self-respect, which can be gained only if we have achieved the first two. If we have really achieved the freedom of thought, if we really believe that okay, we can do whatever we want to do, and we start solving problems around us, and we start really becoming self-reliant in different aspects of our life, only then can we achieve self-respect in terms of what the world, in how the world sees us. And just would like to end with this single small statement by Dr. Kalam. This was what he envisioned, a developed India by 2020 or even earlier. And he clearly mentions it's not a dream. It not need be a mere vision in the minds of many Indians. It is a mission we can all take up and succeed. Right? The question that we need to answer is, are we together in this mission, and are we driven to solve this problem from the roots? And I end my presentation with this. Back to you, Neha.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Abhishek and Prathamesh, for very good and very studied presentation. We are totally aware of the fact that it's not at all easy to present on such serious topic, loaded topic. But yeah, I must say that you guys have done it brilliantly. So I think let's start with the discussion. Akhil, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, great. So let's begin with the discussion. I really like the presentations, as I said. We'll start with a basic question which I have in my mind because I've studied this topic. So I have this question in my mind for Abhishek. So पूरा presentation मैंने आपका सुना, मैंने इस टॉपिक पे बहुत कुछ स्टडी किया है, लेकिन ये टॉपिक जब मैंने पढ़ा तो मुझे ऐसा लगा कि जिस टाइप के गोल्स डॉक्टर कलाम और उनकी पूरी टीम ने सेट किए थे, तो वो गोल्स इतने ज्यादा थे कि मुझे ऐसा लगा कि 22 इयर्स की जो एक टाइम पीरियड जो हमें दिया गया था, आई थिंक इट वी नीड मोर टाइम. व्हाट डू यू थिंक?
Yep. Hi. So, very good point, right? So I was also thinking on the same line. He did mention, so the Dr. Abdul Kalam ne ye likha, so he also mentioned that a country generally achieves their vision in 25 years. So that's the perspective with which he started. I think he's great, like no doubt about
Yeah.
that. We are not even there to question what he was thinking. But a critical thing to understand over here is the way in which a country works. So India, we as a country, the whole India operates in a very democratic manner.
Yeah.
A key tenet of that democracy is the changes do come in very slowly.
Yeah.
But the pro of that is that all the changes come when everybody is aligned on them. So जब हम कंपेयर करते हैं चाइना के साथ, तो वहां पे वो 60s में माओ आए और उसके बाद दे went into a different phase of growth, but
Yeah.
all of that came at a cost. So you have your Tiananmen Square coming in at that
Yeah.
same phase. इंडिया में क्या होता है कि अगर आपने जैसे आप कई बार देखोगे गवर्नमेंट अगर ऑर्डिनेंस देती है तो दे बेसिकली शॉर्ट सर्किट द एंटायर जर्नी, राइट? बहुत ही जल्दी से कुछ नया रूल लेके आके वो इम्प्लीमेंट कर देंगे. एंड देन in India, because we are a democracy, because people have the right to express their discerns and disconcerns and concerns, यहाँ पे protest होते हैं, protest बहुत ज़्यादा होते हैं, governments गिर जाती हैं. And that's why I think for a country like India, things will generally tend to happen a bit slower.
Yeah.
ऑफ कोर्स अगर आपके गोल हाई नहीं है तो आप कहीं नहीं पहुंचोगे. तो उनके गोल उतने लॉफ्टी थे कि वी आर while we are still like 10% of where he was imagining us to be, we are much better than where we were 10 years back. That's what I think.
या क्योंकि मैंने एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरी पढ़ी जब मैं इस टॉपिक पे स्टडी कर रही थी. व्हेन ही वाज प्रेसिडेंट, ही वाज लाइक ही हैड दिस विजन फॉर राष्ट्रपति भवन, एंड उन्हें राष्ट्रपति भवन में बहुत बड़ा सोलर प्लांट खड़ा करना था. So he asked his advisors कि अब देखो अभी क्या कर सकते हैं, and I want to do this, and अगर राष्ट्रपति भवन में ये हुआ तो पूरी कंट्री में इसके बहुत अच्छे इफेक्ट्स हमें दिख सकते हैं वगैरह वगैरह. तो इतने ब्यूरोक्रेटिक हर्डल्स आए राष्ट्रपति को, खुद इतनी परमिशंस लेनी पड़ी, इतने लेटर्स ये वो, कि उनका टेन्योर खत्म हो गया. So, ये मैंने पढ़ा. तो ये ब्यूरोक्रेटिक हर्डल्स के बारे में एक्चुअली आई वाज लुकिंग कि आप दोनों के प्रेजेंटेशन में कुछ आएगा. सो ब्यूरोक्रेटिक हर्डल्स या ऑब्वियसली एक बहुत बड़ा रेड टेपिज्म जिसे हम कहते हैं, या बहुत स्लोली थिंग्स होती है वर्क. तो उसके बारे में आप क्या कहना चाहेंगे, क्योंकि एजुकेशन, आईटी सेक्टर, हेल्थ के लिए इतनी बहुत बड़े सेक्टर्स है जिसमें हमें काम करना हम एक्सपेक्टेड है कि गवर्नमेंट के लिए, सिविल सर्विसेज के लिए, सिविल सोसाइटी के लिए, एनजीओज के लिए. तो ब्यूरोक्रेसी के बारे में आप क्या कहेंगे, आपको क्या लगता है?
So if I may
Prathamesh,
just,
you also can add if you want to add anything. Yeah.
So I'll just add in 2 cents that I have on this. There was also this other incident which happened, right? तो हमारी पार्लियामेंट में there is a lower house, there is an upper house. उन लोगों ने एक बिल पास किया. I think it was to do with their income or something. I'm not very sure about what it was about. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam was clearly very much against it. So जब ऐसा प्रोसेस किया कि आपके लोअर हाउस ने पास किया, अपर हाउस ने पास किया, it goes to the president for him to sign. He is the executive. तो उन्होंने मना कर दिया. The way in which we have structured, so the president can deny it only once. तो ये वापस से हाउस में जाता है. They have to re-debate on it. हाउस वालों ने फिर से दोनों हाउस में पास कर दिया. Now he has no option but to sign it. So आप जो बोल रहे हो, bureaucracy is something with which we are working. So of course जो आपके digital initiatives आप देखते हो, जिसमें जो MyGov का example था, तो ये सब तरीके हैं जहाँ पे हम वो red tapeism को कम कर रहे हैं. धीरे धीरे कम होगा, क्योंकि इतने साल पुराना है, इतना डीप रूटेड पूरा स्ट्रक्चर बना हुआ है, एंड ऐसा नहीं कि काम नहीं करता, इट डज वर्क, राइट? लेकिन स्लो होगा. बट द अदर पार्ट इज the concept that the people have. So we get the government that we vote for, and the government that we deserve, right? So अब जब आपके policy makers वैसे हैं, तो bureaucracy another part है. आपका जो legislative है वो भी वैसे ही है, and that's why things turn out a bit slowly. I think if everybody is very responsible in this, all the citizens are equally responsible and voice their concern, the government does listen. They don't have any other option, also because of the same reason that this is democracy.
Akhil, do you want to add anything on this?
As we are on the topic of the pace of development, right? To begin with, I think we should admire the simplicity of these 5 goals. I mean, we might think of them as something is a great vision, but now we're sitting at 2020, and like Abhishek, you mentioned about the IT sector, right? Probably we may not have envisioned this kind of growth. So I want both of you to pick up from your respective things. In which areas did we really satisfy? We can look back and say, yes, we are on that trajectory of reaching out or matching up to what the vision was. And in which area we have not yet gone there. 2 minutes each. Abhishek first. Abhishek.
Okay. All right. So essentially, when I think about that, Akhil, I personally think, even when I was doing the research, that on the ICT front, we are really over there. I think it's even beyond what was in the mind. In 1998, nobody had any idea. मतलब हमने नहीं सोचे थे, मोबाइल नहीं होते थे तब. Coming from that stage to a stage within mere 20 years, जहाँ पे आपके पास मोबाइल है तो आपको इनफैक्ट कुछ और नहीं चाहिए. आप जब मोबाइल लेके चलते तो आप मतलब पूरा बैंक लेके चल रहे हो अपने साथ. We have come this much far. This is a good thing which happened. अभी इसमें क्या होता है, इसमें एक काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट आता है. पहले का नैरेटिव ये होता था कि व्हेन अ कंट्री ग्रोज तो आपका एग्री बेस्ड इकोनॉमी होता है, देन उसके अंदर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग आता है, एंड देन आपकी सर्विसेज आती हैं. तो आपका एक बेस फाउंडेशन स्ट्रांग हो जाता है, विच वी यूज्ड टू से कि वी मिस्ड आउट ऑन. चाइना ने डेवलप कर लिया मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कैपेबिलिटी, हमने नहीं किया. बट आई थिंक that's one way of looking at it, जो कि अब पुराना हो गया है, जहाँ पे हम देखते हैं कि we missed the train. Going forward, what we did was we understood कि we have already missed the train. Rather than lamenting about it and trying to build up, हाँ foundational बना दिया वरना service पे नहीं जाएंगे. What we did was हम लोग being very Indian thing, right? So we took a very shortcut. We said कि services में घुस जाते हैं and let's take China by their horns in this sector. जहाँ भी China was thinking about it, अभी English develop नहीं हो रहा था and हम लोग जाके वहाँ पे number 1 position ले लिया. ऑफ कोर्स आपको तीनों सेक्टर में एक बैलेंस्ड व्यू चाहिए, बट आई थिंक आईसीटी को हमने बहुत अच्छे से लेवरेज किया. वी ऑल्सो, सो प्रथमेश का पॉइंट था कि मतलब एजुकेशन से यूनिवर्सिटीज हैं, लोग नहीं आ रहे, रिसर्चेस नहीं हो रहे. आई थिंक आप उसके 5 साल और पहले देखेंगे तो एजुकेशनल यूनिवर्सिटीज भी नहीं थे. इनफैक्ट हमारा इंडिया में एनरोलमेंट वो सो लो कि मिड डे मील चालू किया ताकि बच्चे स्कूल आके खाना खाने आए लेकिन स्कूल आए. सो आई थिंक कि कहाँ से, that's why I was saying in my slide also in my presentation कि it's very important to see from where we are coming, what's the journey that we had, and in that context, to answer your question, Akhil, I think ICT was like something fab.
Prathamesh, your take on this?
Yeah. So I completely agree to Abhishek's point that it is the entire journey that we have to look at, not just where we are. Just to always keep us aligned in terms of where we want to head. Yes, ICT has been the biggest growth lever for India. Services market has created immense amount of value, immense amount of wealth for the Indians. It is probably one of the biggest reasons why we have uplifted so many people from below poverty lines to the middle class and the upper middle class and so on and so forth, which has kind of created an aspiration value for the next generation, right? But again, also I would say that on pharma side we are also doing good. The journey which started 20 years back with generics business, जो भी drugs off patent हो चुके हैं, जो भी drugs हम लोग को पता है कि अभी इसका protection खत्म हो गया है, let's start mass manufacturing these drugs so that we can start solving these critical problems for Indians and the world. Slowly and steadily we started growing our capabilities in this entire generics business, then started mass manufacturing for the world. We are one of the top manufacturers and top exporters in the pharma side also. Now slowly and steadily we are getting into the novel drugs wala game, where we have companies like Biocon who are building novel drugs, novel therapies for different indications. Roadways and railways, we are doing good. I won't say we are doing bad, we are doing good. But the quality is always a big question mark, right? Because again, there is a different play here, right? So we also talked about bureaucracy. We also talked about different players who are involved in these kind of different activities. One thing which we definitely have to understand is what is bureaucracy. It's nothing but a group of people who are making this execution possible, right? And there is a very interesting concept called change management in management sciences. Change management is very simple, that whenever you want to bring about a drastic change at an organization level, there are certain phases through which the entire organization goes through, right? Because you're essentially not just transforming your organization, you're essentially putting all the people who are involved in this entire organization into a zone outside their comfort area. You're asking them to do things differently. They're used to people coming to them and saying, sir, mera please file pass karwa do. And now you're essentially saying कि नहीं तुम्हारे इस कंप्यूटर पे सामने एक ये पॉपअप आएगा, विंडो आएगा, उस पे बस ओके बटन दबाना. So you're essentially making them powerless, right? So that is essentially why also, which also slows down the entire process of transforming India and really achieving the dreams that we have. But yeah, that is my take on this entire thing.
Right. So coming to the point of services sector and manufacturing sector, much of all 3 points, we are at this juncture where we are completing 2020, and the next future doesn't really lie in the services sector. It lies in the product sector. We have to come up with the products. So my question will be to both of you. The first thing is, we were okay. We skipped a step. We came to the tertiary sector and we are working there. Can we go back? Prathamesh, how do we go back? How do we go and become a manufacturing dominant country? What is the in a very simple step, that what is it that we need to do correctly to become, so that we strengthen our manufacturing sector also?
So I would say that this question has two fundamental angles to it. One is to accept the fact that we can build products and we can build technologies, and because this is a big stigma that I've seen around all of us. We have a lot of appreciation. We clap our hands when we see that someone is doing some jugaad. But all these jugads essentially are a very good indicator that we can invent, we can find innovative solutions to our problems. All we need to crack is how do we take these solutions at a scale? How do we, tie them into a beautifully designed industrial quality product and then take it to the different markets? That is first point, where we have to start believing that okay, we can build products. Period. And second is we have to somehow remove this mindset that okay, manufacturers are bad. Where these manufacturers, the only goal that these guys have is to chusify their labors, कि लेबर से काम करवा लो और अपना पेट भरो. So ये जो manufacturers के against एक mindset बन चुका है ना, we have to work on this mindset problem. I'll give you a very simple recent example. Wistro, a company which manufactures iPhone for Apple, they have this huge plant in Tamil Nadu. 7,000 people one fine day come to the campus and vandalize this entire property, break it down just because they feel that they are being, they're not taken care of. Again, there is a contract labor problem, which again there's a huge mess which is slowly unfolding. But I feel the sentiment, this socialist mindset, that okay, manufacturers are bad, businesses are bad, businessmen are bad, and they are always looking to take advantage of you and fill their own pockets. This mindset has to be broken down, right? No, these people are not bad.
No, but I have question related to this particular point, where you are saying that we need to change our laws and we need to change our mindset. Do you think that there is a simple thing we need to do is we need to increase the expenditure on human development? What do you think? Because जब हम कह रहे हैं कि ये होना चाहिए, यूनिवर्सिटीज आनी चाहिए, रिसर्च होना चाहिए, एटीट्यूड में चेंज होना चाहिए, so we need to focus on the development of society, not from economic point of view but socially, educationally. और मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जब वो सभी फ्रंट्स पे हम ट्राई करेंगे, इम्प्रूवमेंट्स करेंगे, तभी वो एटीट्यूड वाले चेंजेस की जो हम बात करें तो वो आएगी. आपको क्या लगता है? Abhishek, do you want to add anything? Or Prathamesh, like anyone?
Right. So just on the previous point, let me add one thought that I have. Right. So I think there are two phases to it, Akhil. One is as the point around which Prathamesh was talking about, which is getting into innovation and getting a new product company. Right. At the end of it, what you'd get is you'd get an Apple, you'd get a Microsoft, all coming from India, which would generate a lot of revenue, and you'd be a product-based company. There is also the second aspect of it, which is essentially what China was doing and the phase that we missed out on, which is the MSME sector, right? That's the area. So we can't say that the government has not really looked at that. We have skill development organizations formed by the government. There is funds coming out. There is e-Mudra and other financial help for those MSMEs and entrepreneurship as well. I think they also form an integral part where maybe they are not really working on the innovativeness of it, but they definitely play a key role in getting our capabilities up for production of goods. If nothing else, domestically, we are a very huge market. The second example around the Winston case, Prathamesh, so I was also reading on that. In fact, I was thinking like, what's really happening? What I read today, in fact, a couple of hours back, was the Karnataka government. So of course, the company came to government, right? And it's a global thing now. We are a manufacturer of Apple. We came to your country people are just coming in and destroying it. Karnataka government was to help them go beyond it. They actually started an investigation. I think it's being done by Reuters, so independent third-party investigation. It was found that the company actually was making people work for 12 hours without paying them overtime. What's good in this whole story is that as a nation, we are not getting lopsided on either side, right? So, and that's the way to go about it. You stay balanced, you hear from both the parties. And when the focus of all your initiatives and endeavors become the nation and the people of the nation. So what essentially is the country? Country is its people. When that becomes the focus of all your strategy forming, all your tactical operations and so on, everything else is an indicator of it. So the economic metrics which you were mentioning, Neha, and the HDI. So HDI then becomes the focus of it, and economic metrics improving is a side product. That's an indicator, but your goal is to build the nation in a very holistic manner. And that's why the word holistic is very important.
Yeah.
We don't believe that manufacturers are bad, but we also don't believe that the contract laborers are bad, right? So you strike a balance over there, is what I think.
Yeah, I think that this holistic approach is very necessary because जब research में कर रही थी तो hunger index होगा या poverty levels होंगे, unavailability of food, malnourishment, ये बहुत सारे problems है. इसीलिए जब मैंने research में कर रही थी तो मुझे लगा कि 20 years we need more time because there are more than 20% people living below poverty line. क्योंकि जब in 1998 there were some like 239 universities in 1998 in India, and right now we have some 995 universities across the country, normal universities. I'm not talking about international institutes or education institutes, but yeah, I think मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि मैं बहुत दूर तक जाना है. हम अभी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग की बात कर रहे हैं, हम अभी इंडस्ट्रीज की बात कर रहे हैं. Obviously we are improving, no doubt about it, but human development, क्योंकि I was a yatri, the Jagruti Yatra, the 15-day train journey. Nice. So I was a yatri, and we visited some tier 2, tier 3 cities in India. So वो जो India है जो मैंने देखा, that India is not at all like, that's what I feel, that India was not at all connected with urban India or tier 1 cities. उन्हें पता ही नहीं है कि क्या चल रहा है. And we are talking about this vision and this superpower status. So मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि बहुत contrast है. क्या हम बोल एक रहे हैं जहाँ पे actual जरूरत है वहाँ कुछ हो नहीं रहा है या पहुँच नहीं रहा. So आपको क्या लगता है? Like प्रथमेश, तुम्हारा काही सांगायचं काय याबद्दल?
Sure. So I think the one angle to this from my side is every person, when they are investing a certain amount of money in building something, you're always looking at return on that investment, right? For political parties, it is in terms of political capital that they gain. So if they invest certain amount of money in doing something, building something for a certain region of the society, what is the political capital that they get as a return, right? So I think that is one of the fundamental drivers in terms of deciding the priorities कि किधर कब क्या करना है. And most of the times we see that these tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, or even rural areas, they kind of get deprioritized in different segments because the return on capital from these initiatives may not be that high, right? For example, you might want to set up a IIT in some rural area, but what is the return that you are going to get on that? Because people won't want to go to an IIT which is, say, maybe in one of the remote towns in, say, Kerala, right? No one wants to go there. So I think that is a fundamental thing which we have to understand. And second is the limited number of resources which we deal with. There is only certain amount of money that we can invest across different areas. As you rightly said, there are so many problems in front of us. And unfortunately, private participation in a lot of these areas is really low. But again, that is again the fundamental problem, right? So you have limited resources, and you have to take into consideration what is the return on this investment that you'll get in terms of your political capital, being a political party, and then these kind of in combination decide your priorities in terms of what you want to build, whom you want to build for. Fortunately, this government, I believe, is progressive looking. We also discussed the MSME part, right? Abhishek mentioned the MSME part. So we have been working with Ministry of MSME for a long time, and we know that the amount of effort that these guys are putting in, to improve the conditions in which these MSMEs work, to uplift them to a different level, to help them improve their game, so that they can build better things. Be it zero defect policy, be it giving them consultancy in terms of Six Sigma and all of these different areas to improve their way of business. Running constant skill development programs, building central facility centers, common facility centers where they can come and work, where they get access to high grade technology which they cannot afford individually. So I think these initiatives are there, and I think time is a lot of so answers to a lot of these questions will be a function of time, other than anything else. But this is primarily my take, that when it comes to analyzing and understanding why the government invests in certain things, in building certain things for certain segments of the society, it's generally a function of two things. One is the resources that you have available, and the second is what is the return on this resources that you are going to invest in terms of political capital which I can earn, which kind of decides my priorities as a government.
Akhil, do you want to add anything?
Yes, Prathamesh mentioned a very interesting thing कि हम जो डेवलपमेंट देख रहे हैं या फिर जो विजन है, it is a function of time. So I think both of you are from the IT side background. We can to उस लैंग्वेज में अगर मैं कहूँ तो ये जो हम 20 साल का बोल रहे हैं कि विजन 2020, अभी हमारे पास एक मॉडल है कि एक we had a vision and then we have some data कि हम उस किस विजन पे उस किस तरफ कितने यहाँ तक आए हैं. My question to Abhishek is, if we want to model for the next, say, 20 or 27 years, right? So at कौन से juncture पे you will put in those specific time check कि जो code run हो रहा है वो उधर जाके we can go back and look, because I don't recall क्या हमने 2010 में ये exercise किया था कि where we want to reach into 2020. क्या हमने 2015 में ये किया था? Probably not, right? Probably we were not that excited about this vision of 2020 in 2010, in 2015, or even in 2005. So how do you look at it, Abhishek? Because both of you have presented those graphs and those statistics. Where do we put in that part, Abhishek?
I think this should be the last question, because it's we are running out of time. So yeah, this is the last question, and
Right, cool.
Abhishek.
Thanks, Neha, and thanks, Akhil, for the question. So, matlab, the point which you mentioned about IT experience and trying to build a project plan for that, I think the structural approach does apply over here. Of course, अब जब हम आगे का देखेंगे तो आप दो तीन चीजें देखोगे. आप तो सबसे पहले ये डिफाइन करोगे कि आपको जाना कहाँ है. तो आपका एक जो एंड गोल होगा वो विजन तो कलाम साहब ने बना दिया हमारे लिए. लेकिन अब उसके जो सक्सेस मेट्रिक हैं वो उन्होंने डिफाइन नहीं किए. आई थिंक वो भी उनका एक विजनरी होना दिखाता है, क्योंकि 1998 नोबडी हैड एन आइडिया कि मेरी डेटा स्पीड और कॉस्ट वुड बिकम वन ऑफ द पैरामीटर. इसके लिए जो नेहा का पॉइंट था कि वी रिटेन द HDI, ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट इंडेक्स, एट द कोर ऑफ इट. ऑल्सो गिवन द कंटेक्स्ट कि हम एज अ नेशन क्या चाहते हैं, हमारा हमेशा से इंक्लिनेशन कहाँ रहा है, हमारी एक्सपेंशनरी पॉलिसीज नहीं रही हैं. सो वी हैव नॉट बीन लुकिंग एट अटैकिंग कंट्रीज एंड सो ऑन. तो इट्स इम्पॉर्टेंट टू डिफाइन आपके KPIs क्या होंगे, सक्सेस मेट्रिक्स क्या होंगे, एंड आप उसको रिव्यू करो. लेकिन इट्स ऑल्सो इम्पोर्टेंट टू बिल्ड इन दैट बफर टाइम कि हाँ मैंने 25 साल सोचा है लेकिन इट्स प्रॉब्ली नॉट गोना हैपन इन दैट. व्हाट इफ इट डज नॉट हैपन? it's important to build in the flexibility around your goals as well. So ये मेरे आज KPIs हैं, लेकिन next year or in next 5 years I see completely different scenarios coming in. Am I flexible enough to change them? But the frequency at which I'm going to check those things, I think it is continuous process. मतलब there is no other way around it, right? So आप एक committee बना सकते हैं जो उसको check कर रही है, but as was the whole point, right? It's so diverse, so many different sectors, such a big country, so many different problems कि आपके जो KPIs होंगे कभी भी it would not be enough. Problem क्या होता है उसमें? If you're not flexible, या आप मतलब 5 साल के बाद एक planning commission बना रहे हो, तो within those 5 years आप एकदम टेंजेंशियली डिफरेंट डायरेक्शन में चले जाते हो. आपका कोर्स करेक्शन बिकम्स वेरी वेरी स्लो. दिस इज व्हाट हैपेंड व्हेन वी गॉट इंडिपेंडेंस. तो हमने 19 जो शुरू के 2-5 साल के प्लानिंग कमीशंस बने थे हमारे, वो सारे मतलब एग्री में गए. उसके बाद फिर हमने इंडस्ट्री में फोकस चेंज कर दिया. जब तक हमको पता चला कि भाई हम लोग तो एग्री में पीछे रह गए, तब तक यहाँ पे फेमाइन आ गया. मतलब वी डिड नॉट हैव फूड टू ईट. वी डोंट वांट दैट टू हैपन. सो इट हैज टू बी अ कंटीन्यूअस प्रोसेस. आई थिंक नीति आयोग इज अ वेरी गुड enabler which comes in. annual meetings होते हैं, उनके goals होते हैं हर साल. बहुत ही structural situation है, right? एक CEO है जो कि measure कर रहा है, वो आपको report दे रहा है हर साल, which is a good thing. It also helps us enable to keep the whole thing very agile, and that's what I think. If I can just add in one more point, sorry, it's just something which I have in mind. I wanted to get it out. Maybe Neha, जो आपने जागृति यात्रा किया था,
yeah,
I think and that's also one of the objective of this platform, right? So we think at what we know. मेरे को लगता है कि we need to rethink. हम लोग बहुत जल्दी डिस्काउंट कर देते हैं what the people in tier 1 and tier 2 cities know. So जो मेरा गांव है वो मतलब ऐसी जगह है, जब मैं छोटा था तो जाता था, वहाँ पे लाइट नहीं होती थी. फिर मैं गया तो लोग बोले लाइट आ गई, 6 घंटे होती है. तो मैं प्रथमेश का मैप देख के बहुत खुश हो रहा था कि यूपी में 18 आवर्स दिखा रहा है. आई थिंक बहुत ही स्क्यूड एवरेज है. फिर मैं अब गया तो उन्होंने बोला बहुत लाइट है, लेकिन मैंने पूछा कब रहती है, तो बोलते हैं जब तुम सोते हो रात को आती है, और जब आप उठते हो तब तक चली जाती है. ठीक है. बट एवरीबडी ओवर देयर इज अवेयर ऑफ जनधन योजना. दे ऑल ऑफ देम हैव लेवरेज्ड वो ओपन डेफिकेशन को रोकने के लिए प्रोग्राम चला था, तो हर जगह पे बन रहे हैं. इनफैक्ट सोलर लाइट्स लग रही हैं गांव में, एंड वो they are the same people. None of them went to those 995 universities which came up, but they are aware about all of it. Just to wrap it up, right? So जब इंडिया इंडिपेंडेंट हुआ तो एक यूनिवर्सल सफरेज हुआ था, एडल्ट सफरेज. So which essentially said कि हर इंडिपेंडेंट बंदा above age of 18 would get a voting right. सबका वोट will count as same. अगर आपके पास डिग्री है तो आपको नहीं है, आपका वोट will count as 2 votes. At that time the question that was raised was ki, are you sure people are intelligent enough to make that call? We can like look back and say ki definitely people were always intelligent. So the level of intelligence is much higher there. They are not so much disconnected. It's just the later flow in which comes in and they pick up maybe what.
ये तो है ही. मैंने ऐसा नहीं कहा कि कहीं भी पहुंच नहीं रहे. People are not aware, people are not politically connected. But जहाँ पे मैं गई थी, हमारी जहाँ पे विजिट्स हुई थी, वहाँ पे बहुत ही सिचुएशन प्रॉब्लम.
And fair point, right? So I'm not even saying कि आप जो बोल रहे सही नहीं है. I just wanted to bring in this perspective.
Sure. I can understand. Prathamesh, last remarks.
KPIs and matrices, Prathamesh.
I would rather put it this way, that all of us, should start identifying these problems, small micro problems around us. They don't need to be big fancy unicorn level ideas. They should not come from a thought that okay, I want to build $1 billion business. But all we need to do is just look around us and start identifying these small problems which we can solve. And it might be in form of business also. Business is just one form factor in terms of how do we solve a problem, right? But again, for example, Gourmets as a platform, making this communication, making this discussion happen is again a solution to a problem, right? Where we take these informed discussions to people who don't have access to informed discussions. The media that we have, it churns out a lot of rubbish, lot of garbage, and lot of propaganda to misdirect people most of the times in different directions, then really inform them and educate them about issues that really matter, right? So again, finding these problems, solving for these problems is very important. Again, vision is, so I have a definition of vision, right? Vision is something which is just one step away from reality, that you want to do this, but this is just one step away from reality. Every time you chase it, it just keeps on going farther and farther away, right? So there is, when we talked about developed country, there is nothing called as a developed country. It is our imagination, it is our perception of what a developed country looks like, right? But for me, what is more important is, as a society, are we together in solving the problems of our own, or are we just cribbing about those problems and waiting for someone else to solve that problem? Right? When we make this switch, I think we are already a developed society. If you go to countries like US, if you go to countries like UK, if you go to countries like Switzerland, they're not developed because they have some imaginary huge superhuman powers, but they have this very interesting mindset of solving problems. I'll just give you another example. In India, we have this fascination of going to different countries to further education and settle down there. But if you go to Switzerland, there are a lot of students from universities in Switzerland who come to India with a very fundamental agenda that we want to understand what are the problems which still persist in India. Then they will go back, build a technology and sell that product back to India. Case in point being, if you read about rice polishing machines, we import them from Switzerland. Switzerland is a country which does not produce rice, but they build rice polishing machines which they sell to India, right? So the switch that we need to achieve is very simple, that okay, let's stop ignoring our problems, let's stop cribbing about our problems, and let's start solving our problems.
Yeah.
This switch itself, in my humble opinion, is the very definition that, okay, we are a developed country.
Yeah, yeah. Very, very, very good point. Because ये ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ गवर्नमेंट की ड्यूटी है. It should be a collective effort from an individual, from an organ, NGO, and obviously a state. So yeah, I think now it's time to wrap up the discussion. I request Komal to come up with concluding remarks. Komal?
Yes, thank you, Neha. In the December episode of Goldsmith today, we have discussed the topic India in living up to Dr. Kalam's Vision 2020. We had Abhishek and Prathamesh make presentations involving different points under this topic. We saw the roadmap for the vision of a developed India that Dr. Kalam laid down, which was by means of identifying 5 areas in combination based on India's core competence, natural resources, and talented manpower for an integrated action to double the growth rate of GDP. Abhishek started with laying down the importance of considering where we have come from as a country in order to rightly assess our standing today. He talked about the agriculture and food processing sector. India's agriculture's peculiarities like subsistence farming, small-sized farms, and employment was discussed. We looked at the different phases through which India's agriculture passed. First, the British Raj, which was characterized by the zamindari system, cash crops, and focusing on farmers, etc. Second, the revolutions, including land reforms. And third, the post-globalization that saw cost competition and industrialization. Agriculture accounts for 18% of India's GDP, but employs more than 50% of its workforce, is one fact that we saw. There are other problems like low yield, crop wastage, and significant primary dependence on rainfall, as we saw through the presentation. India's agriculture was then compared with the global scenario, where we saw that India's farmers capture only 8 to 15% of the agri value chain. The challenges facing the Indian agribusiness value chain were identified under 5 heads. First, enablers, then inputs, third, farm produce, fourth, logistics and warehousing, and fifth, retail. Improvement here can come with leveraging technology, sustainability, collaborative responsibility, and the focus in all this being on farmers. We further saw in the presentation a talk on the situation with ICT, information and communication technology, considering some data like India being the world's 2nd largest telecom sector with 680 million users, and the fact that we've created records in most single month UPI transactions. The Digital India today created by the foundation set by investment and innovation, the lack in adequate regulations, and all of this was also part of the presentation that was made. We then had Prathamesh make a presentation starting with listing what Dr. Kalam looked at as part of his dream for India and the important factors of freedom, development, and self-respect. India's standing vis-a-vis other powers like the UK, US, and China was assessed on parameters like GDP, active companies, patents filed, translating to how much we are innovating. There was a talk on India and education further, where the presenter opined that the attention problem of students was actually a non-problem. And then he used series, binge watching video games and social media as examples to say that the need now is teaching better teaching formats that suit students. We then looked at the scenario pertaining to infrastructure, transport, and energy in India, where India needs to work to achieve beyond mere perceptions of improvement, the presenter said. Then the healthcare sector was taken up for discussion, and the need that is existing in the healthcare sector of addressing certain pressing issues that face it, like dismal doctor population ratio, hospital beds was also discussed. The need to strive to work together instead of complaining is something the presenter said. The panelists further discussed on how India had been able to deliver beyond expectations in many parts of the IT sector. However, despite many developments and government initiatives, we continue to lag in the education sector is also something they discussed, the quality of education to be particular. What can be done to improve our manufacturing sector was also considered. On that, speakers discussed innovation and the need to leverage our ability as a country in it. Differences in the takes of both the presenters became apparent as they discussed the point of socialism, the point of compulsiveness to look at manufacturers as bad, countered by a view vouching for maintaining a balanced view to looking at the concerns of workers and employers. As they explored the topic, the panelists agreed that about certain sectors, we may say that India did miss the bus. They concluded with acknowledging the relevance of Dr. Kalam's vision for 2020 and now the need to define beyond 2020, what do we target as a nation, and involving a practical flexibility in those targets. This was the discussion on Dr. Kalam's Vision 2020 in the last Golmej of the year 2020. Neha.
Thank you so much, Komal. It's time to announce the next session details. Kapilesh, can you please share the image with all of us? Yes, so this is the topic. India's agriculture, sentiments or economics. These days, we all are reading and listening a lot about farmers' protests, agriculture. But do we really know the issue? Do we really know about agriculture industry? Loads of information is pouring and like bombarded. We are really confused. So we need to look at this issue. We need to look at this issue of agriculture sensibly and rationally. Before that, we need to understand the agriculture sector. Let's start with basics. Next month, 16th January 2021, we will discuss the story of agriculture in detail. Till then, Happy New Year to all of you in advance. See you next month. This is it from my side.